soon as
Gangsters, 'cause we speak bold, ain't tripping on the haters. It could take freedom from a cold dead hands. We're locked and loaded for the last dance. 'Cause we're the new American gangsters, ready to die for this man.
Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. And with us today in studio is Senator Wendy Rogers.
As
Have you
most of
been-
you know, my favorite Arizona senator.
my hiking partner over here.
Yeah.
Great to be here.
You missed my fist bump, and I missed yours. Sorry.
We'll have a lot of fun.
Yeah. Oh, tell me. How you doing today?
Doing good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wanted to sort of offer the floor up to Wendy maybe to see if she can provide any legislative updates or if she wants to talk about any legislation she has pending.
Well, thanks. I've been running a constellation of immigration bills,
Mhm.
3 of which passed through the Military and Border Security Committee today. And it was interesting because 3 of my Democrat colleagues protested and stood up and disrupted the meeting. So this is a constant litany of progression, I guess you could say, that they pursue. Why are they so irritable? Well, it's because I'm running bills that my constituents want me to run. The 3 today were number 1, if you are still seeking asylum, you don't get state benefits. Imagine that. The second one is there are gaps in the wall. Brian, you and I have been to the wall a few times, and it's an appropriation to fund filling in these gaps in the wall and the fencing. The other one was these poor counties and towns, many of which I represent, disproportionately bear the cost of housing short-term detainees to the tune of $152 a day. So, in my view, the state should reimburse them. But you'll hear all kinds of pushback against this because what they do is they talk about it's racial profiling, it's ignoring the benefits that illegals contribute to the economy. All of these specious arguments show that they know they're losing the case.
Mhm. Well, it's funny because I know that historically most illegals, when they come here and work, and I think we're really seeing this with the Somalis in Minnesota as more and more evidence comes out, is they're not benefiting our economy. They're
Not at all.
sending a lion's share of their money back home, and that should be the big clue where they're sending their money. They're sending their money home, and so this isn't per se their home.
Correct. They're not Americans, which is a misnomer, which is constantly cited. Oh, and we need to be more human. And it misses what's really the case, which is the
Right.
adverse impact that illegals make
Mhm.
on our state. On the roads, ADOT is the biggest agency I go after as a rural legislator to get funding.
Mhm.
Our hospitals, I'm running a bill that is an accountancy bill,
Mhm.
which essentially says it's voluntary to disclose your citizenship status. We will treat you in the hospital regardless, but we want to know how much we, the taxpayers, are paying.
Right.
And they hate this accountability.
Right.
In fact, one of my colleagues said the quiet part out loud today. She said, I don't think we should have a border.
Wow.
Yeah.
And another one of them said, oh, I agree with you. We should just go after the criminals. At which point I said, they're all criminals.
Right.
Because illegal means illegal.
No, they violated federal law.
Right.
Right.
So when your first act entering this country is to break the law, then, I don't understand how people can believe that somehow it's inappropriate to say, we don't want you in this country because you didn't come the right way. Your first act was breaking the law. So what did that protest look like? How does that work? Was this in committee?
Oh, yes. So a week ago, lean into the mic more. That's okay. Oh. And what happened a week ago today was a complete meltdown in the committee room. We had protesters yelling. Well, first they start this clicking thing.
Right. I've actually seen that before.
Well, that then escalates into a louder clicking thing. And then after that, you have shouting. And at one point, it got so bad, and they were yelling, Rogers, you're so wrong, or so many words, and Champ, you're so wrong. And at that point, the chair finally got the gumption to call security in. Well, they watch on live stream down the hall, and they sort of know to alert and respond. But then when security approached these rabble-rousers in the audience, oh, and by the way, the evening TV cameras, evening news, local TV cameras are rolling.
Mhm.
And they approach the protesters with their hands open, which I've learned from our son, who's a church guard.
Mhm.
He said this shows approachability. We don't need approachability. We need them out.
Yeah.
And so what happened was it was delayed as the security sort of inched in. This was last week.
Mm-hmm.
And that emboldened them more.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when they began to yell our names and really become unruly. This is a problem because it degrades the integrity of the institution. It degrades the fact that voters elected me to go to a constitutional republic model to represent them.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And now you have people who, and as I said in closing remarks to one of today's bills, you don't get to choose what laws you want to obey or disobey. We are a nation of laws that comports with the rule of law, and that's why I'm running these bills. So it's very black and white, and I'm not going to waver from that. And two of the people kicked out last week, I heard from Senator Champ that one of the two, maybe both, were outside cooking up unrest amongst the people who came today.
Now, these weren't legislators, were they? Were
No,
these
okay, so
activists?
let me talk about that. Today, there are 7 on the dais, on the committee. 4 are Republicans and 3 are Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
One became unruly, she said, because one of the testifiers wouldn't answer a question, and the chairman maintained that he should stay at the testifier podium to answer the question. And she took it upon herself to dictate to him that the testifier should not have to continue answering. Well, then it just went downhill from there. And then she stood up, would not sit down, and then her 2 colleagues stood up in sympathy with her. And to me, that's disruption.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, it's more than disruption, right?
It's
instructing-
disrespect.
Yes. It's instructing constituents to disrespect
Right.
the process that we use to legislate.
Correct. And I won't stand for it. I run a very buttoned down, strict atmosphere. You've testified in my
Mm-hmm.
committee before. But now they are nibbling around the edges to see what they can get away with. And it's really all they've got because they can't win the debate. The economic impact has been refuted, as seen by what's happening in Minnesota with all the fraud.
Right.
The racial profiling aspect has been refuted because it's a law. Last week, it was just one of my bills that incited all this unrest, and that's what I said in my remarks last week. This is about following the law. And this bill last week that I spoke to was, if you're already arrested, you must be able to be turned over to ICE. Well, they went on and on about how unfair it is to be arrested. And in a timeline way of looking at it, it was leading up to the arrest. I said, you're all misperceiving this bill. This is after someone has already been arrested.
Right.
So they commit a crime, they're detained and then arrested, taken to jail, found out that they happen to also be illegal. At that point, they would have to turn them over to ICE.
Correct, but maybe they found out
Yeah.
they were illegal first of all.
Could be. Who
Right.
knows?
That could be the crime that led to the arrest, right?
Correct.
And one of their arguments that I hear all the time is, well, we're separating families, right? They have kids at home. How dare you do this? And I think to myself, if I break the law, whatever law that is, and I get arrested, guess what happens? I get separated from my kid, right? Do you hear this kind of argument a lot?
I haven't actually. Interestingly, I hear about it on the news when I listen to podcasts and so forth. In fact, this morning I was listening to Steve Bannon, and they were talking about, or no, it was the Charlie Kirk show. They were talking about human shields.
Mm-hmm.
This is what Hamas does.
Oh, 100%.
They bring their children
right.
to a very dangerous setting, and they put their children in harm's way, hoping, well, I think the organizers and instigators are hoping, I would think the parents wouldn't hope for an ill outcome. But nonetheless, what occurs is a negative outcome on the child.
And I think that just happened in Minnesota. A small child was
pepper sprayed.
Yeah. Because the parents took them to this ICE rally. And well, did you hear about the rallies that teachers were bringing their middle schooler kids to? Three
schools.
Students arrested in the state of Arizona for this violence. But I got a question for you. And I don't know where I heard this, but somebody has proposed that President Trump actually name Immigration's Custom of Enforcement Agency the National Immigration Customs Enforcement, so that everybody has to call them nice. What do you?
I think that's silly. I don't think he would do that.
Little levity there.
Yeah.
But anyway, right. After discussing people taking their children to these protests, especially teachers. I mean, you guys have anything you're proposing
malpractice
with respect to teachers knowingly taking students into a potentially violent and hostile environment?
I haven't seen any bills coming across, but I'm not privy to all of the bills. The House runs a lot of good bills, but we won't see them until crossover week.
Yeah.
But I just had a friend, a podcaster, come at the end of the day today with about 8 or 9 health bills and asked for my help. And I said, well, we'll go talk to Champ because she's a registered nurse and she'll know which ones have navigated their way through and which ones haven't. We have sort of areas of expertise,
Right.
Interesting. Well, I remember back, do you remember the Red for Ed protests?
Of course.
Yeah, I remember back in those days, they were offering the kids extra credit to stand out on the side of the road and protest for Red for Ed. Many of the kids didn't even know what they were protesting.
Right.
I know I had 2 kids at Estrella Middle School at the time, and it was the same thing. They said, well, I have to stay after school for extra credit to protest. I'm like, what do you mean? What are you protesting? I don't know. I just have to hold a sign for the teacher for extra credit on my grade.
Right.
It's, man, what a form and level of manipulation that these people are doing that are in an undue position of influence and how they are targeting the kids.
Oh, it's terrible. Terrible. Yeah. Well, anything else to add about the legislative session?
Well, that's just a little small part. I'm running 58 bills. I said I would never do that many.
I've heard a rumor that you're running one specifically for veterans. Is that true?
Probably a few.
And
state parks, that's a fun one to talk about. We had out-of-town friends whose kids were in the back seat, and we went to a state park. It was about a month ago. And they said, why should we have to pay? You and Uncle Hal are veterans. I said, good point. So I pulled off the side of the road, sent a message to the staff. Next day followed up, and we're running that bill.
That'd be nice. I mean, we have a national. You probably have it. I have it.
Yes.
A national lifetime pass for veterans, and so it's a good benefit for those people who have served our country. Thank you, Wendy. Thank you, Hal, for your service to the United States of America.
Well, appreciate that. It actually did go through a committee, and the state parks people were neutral, which was good.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, well, we give 50% off if you're a retiree. I said, really? I was not asked that.
Right.
Interesting.
Right.
And so there's a lack of information just amongst themselves as to asking that question. And then we tried to, I think the Democrats on my committee tried to project if all tens of thousands of veterans went, would that be a hit to the fund? And there's no way to predict.
Right. Absolutely no way.
Well, you know,
What do you?
I mean, not only that, but I mean, I'm a veteran and I visit all kinds of national parks
Right.
and I promote them, you know, if they're nice. I don't go to Arizona State Parks. I don't get any benefit and I have to pay when I can go out into the back roads, you know, into some very, very incredibly beautiful places where fewer people go. But if I could do national park with a, you know, I would absolutely do them and promote them. But,
Yeah.
you know.
So the Senate passed a resolution condemning Chris Mays.
Mhm.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So what Shelby's referring to is something we put through in a lightning fast fashion. It went through last Thursday, and it was a new type of bill that I've never signed on to before. It was an SR, Senate resolution. You might be familiar with Senate concurrent resolutions, which of course then go through the House. But this was a Senate resolution of its own, just from the Senate. And it essentially said she should retract what she said and resign. There were many other little parts to it. John Kavanaugh was the sponsor. He's a first responder, retired, a great ally and friend to me. He's on my Judiciary Committee. In fact, I'm just this grandma from Flagstaff, and I have two really manly first responder retirees on either side of me. So I have Fincham and I have Kavanaugh, and they're just such a blessing because they have a lot of mileage and experience. And plus, Kavanaugh is the majority leader, and he's been in the legislature for 20 years. So he was the best guy to carry this. Of course, the Democrats tried to say it was Peterson politicizing the process, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And now you're going to ask me if you think she'll be impeached. I don't. I'll tell you why. It starts in the House,
Mm-hmm.
and it requires a simple majority in the House. If that were to occur, it would come to the Senate, where it's 2/3 required. And the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Arizona would preside. And then we 30 senators would sit out in our seats and vote. Do we have 2/3? We do not.
So you have the vote. If it goes out of the House, though, you don't need the votes to conduct the hearing,
Correct.
but you would need the votes at the conclusion of the hearing to actually impeach.
Yeah, and that's the federal model pretty much.
And it'd be to
also.
convict. And so
To
impeachment is basically an indictment, a political indictment in the
Yeah.
House. And then you get the trial and either conviction or not in the Senate. So,
Right.
yeah.
Now you're going to say, well, have the discussion anyway and have the vote anyway. Well, think about that. If that went up on the board, so to speak, and it would fail, How do you think the left would characterize that? They'd characterize it as a victory for her. Plus, I'm just telling you the way of the world, she would fundraise the heck out of that. So at the end of the process, are we ahead? She stays in office. She fundraises millions of dollars. And the press jackals will have a heyday with it. So sometimes we have to think about the practicalities
Right.
and understand the long game.
Well, I think oftentimes I don't think people realize how not only how much you guys do at the legislature, but how much you stand in the gap for the people, right? Virginia, their house flipped big
Mhm.
time, and it's completely left controlled. And there's some interesting bills that have come out this session that we've never had to deal with or see in Arizona. And I thought we'd bring a few of them up.
Sure.
One of them is to make it illegal to hand count ballots.
Scary. So what are they trying to hide?
Yeah. Another one bans future attempts to clean up voter rolls. Right? Can you believe
How
that?
can that even be constitutional?
Well, I think it would be contrary to federal law, and federal law is supreme. But nevertheless, these are some of the radical, attempts they're making to, to completely control elections, for a long time. And so it's pretty sad.
HB 773 allows absentee ballots to be received and counted for 3 days post-election.
Here's a funny one. Makes it illegal for state agencies distributing federal dollars to NGOs to investigate whether the NGOs are engaged in fraud. Right? So you give them money, but you don't get to perform the oversight function, which
Fox
is
guarding the hen house.
right. Yeah.
Here's another one that's not election related, although there's a lot of election bills. This one is to abolish all mandatory minimum sentences for rape, manslaughter, assaulting a law enforcement officer, possession and distribution of child pornography, and all repeat violent felons. So they would completely remove any minimum requirement for sentencing.
Now, how far have these bills gotten?
Many of them have been proposed. None of them have died yet. They're still going into committees. So it'll be interesting to track them, but some of them are pretty bad. Do you have another one there, Brian?
Allows for votes to be cast electronically through the internet.
Brother, what could
That's-
go wrong?
Isn't that scary? Right? And all of these, pro-elections people that say we should rely on experts like Adrian Fontes and Stephen Richard, my favorite clown. They all say, our systems aren't connected to the internet, but they want people to vote through the internet, even though the systems they're already using are very fragile and very hackable, as they are the virtual
Right.
private networks, and so some scary stuff.
This one's interesting. Banning most discriminatory state contracts by making all contracts under $100,000 that are owned by a white man to be passed up for a contract by a woman or minority-owned firm and pay 5% more to have those contracts. So if the white man underbids a minority or a woman, then they can pay up to 5% more than the white man's contract to give it to someone else.
Oh,
That's interesting. That took some work right there.
don't we call that racism?
Discrimination.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
racial discrimination.
There's just, it's unbelievable some of the things. So what is some of the craziest things you've seen since you've been in Senate? Are there any bills that have been proposed in this fashion, or do you think you guys are able to block most of this stuff?
That's a great question. And my old friend Senator Sonny Borelli told me once when I first got started. He said, "The meat and potatoes of leadership are in the chairmanships." And Warren Peterson has done a great job reinforcing that and supporting us. So what happens, and this will be a task of mine Wednesday, we agendize the following Wednesday.
Mhm.
And so I get this whole sheaf of papers, maybe 4 or 5 papers stapled together of bills. 2 or 3 pages of those are Democrat bills. Generally not heard because they're crazy. And you can just look at the title and see how crazy they are. Law enforcement can't wear masks. I mean, just
That's one of the ones on the
Yes.
Virginia list.
so you see these, and I always look at my policy advisors. I have 2, one for elections, one for judiciary, both attorneys. My elections guy is a former judge. And I look at them, and I always sort of just quizzically look, and our eyes meet, and the communication is, why do they even submit these bills? Well, their voters sent them to Phoenix to do that.
Mhm.
I respect that. But thank goodness we have the majority, because having the majority gives me, in my case, this chairmanship. And then I determine whether or not something is going to be heard. If it's not heard, it has died. And occasionally a Democrat, in fact, one whom I've known for years, our daughters are friends, came to me today and said, "Would you consider this bill? How does that work?" I said, "I get that bill and others on these papers every Wednesday, and I will look at it." And then one of her colleagues, one of the only 2 male Democrats, I think, came to me and he said, "I have this bill. Would you look at it?" I told him the same thing. I'm very pleased to consider it when I consider all of them on a weekly basis. And I'm sincere about that. And I look, and once in a blue moon, you'll see a Democrat and a Republican co-sponsoring a bill. I probably wouldn't do that. I probably wouldn't co-sponsor with a Democrat for several reasons, but I like seeing it,
Mhm.
and it brings to mind a definite effort that was made between the 2 sides to do that. And back to the Democrat senator with whom I have little agreement, whose daughters know my daughter, we actually have 1 or 2 things we have agreed on. In fact, last year it was critical that she and I were aligned on being against an Article 5 convention of states. There were several Democrats, thankfully, that were against it, as was I and only 3 other Republicans.
Oh, wow.
It's very dangerous
Oh, exceptionally.
to have an Article 5 convention of states where
Yeah.
Soros could essentially pay off everyone and hijack our Constitution.
Right.
Well, and I'm pretty sure Arizona is one of the majority of states that if we were to call for an Article 5 constitutional convention, the sitting governor gets to pick the appointee to represent Arizona. Is that correct?
That's quite possible, but we as a state have not voted to be a party to that.
Absolutely.
But all they require is 30-some states to agree. And I had this is off track here, but it could happen again this year, this so-called term limits organization that maintains the only way to have term limits put upon U.S. congressman is to have an Article 5 Convention of States vehicle as a way to get to that. Wrong.
That's completely wrong.
They can vote.
Mm-hmm.
Will they vote for themselves to have term limits? Probably not. But that's
possible.
It's another route.
Right.
Well, this pusher of the Article 5 notion, who runs all kinds of ads against me when I run for office every 2 years, met me face to face, and he said to the rest of the room, there were 4 or 5 of us in the room, and Gina Swoboda was there as the party chair. I asked her to step in, and he said, I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars against Senator Rogers because of this. And I looked at him and I said, yeah, but I win every time.
Yeah.
And thank goodness for that, because it's a very dangerous thing.
Very dangerous.
You know, I most of the people that approach me about the Article 5 Convention of the States say, oh, this is just limited to,
That's what he tried to say.
And that is the biggest fallacy that they're pushing. These people just don't understand. Once you open up an Article 5 Convention of the States,
it can become a runaway.
They can amend the Constitution in any way they see fit. And so...
And you don't have true representatives
Right.
representing you at this convention either.
Right, and so that's the problem, is you wind up with a runaway freight train,
Mhm.
and at the end of the day, who knows what you get. Now, you would have to have, a sufficient number of states ratify anything that came out of that, but nonetheless, these Article 5 conventions are not limited to a single issue. They may want to open it on a single issue, but once it's just like how the Republican and Democrat parties work, right? You get to like the state convention and somebody could have been kicked off the ballot, but the body can put them back on the ballot, and the body can do what it wants at those conventions, correct? And so it's not much different from that. And so they're an exceptionally dangerous tool.
And guess who wrote a whole book against it?
Who's that?
Andy Biggs.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, he wrote a whole book about how bad it is, and don't do it.
I'm actually surprised that we still have so many legislators that are still on board with this idea.
They get incentivized.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's not surprising at all.
Yeah.
Incentivized, I like.
That's a nice
That's
way
a good word,
of saying paid
incentivized.
off.
Yeah. Oh,
So what do you think about the FBI raiding Georgia?
I think it portends good things from our view of Arizona. I think there's so much corruption here that so much is still going to be revealed.
yeah. The big difference between Georgia and Arizona is that Georgia, those people working on the election integrity front, have gotten far more transparency from the elections department than we have gotten here. They've basically, Stephen Richer, Adrian Fontes, Maricopa County Attorney's Office have really worked to kill the Public Records Act with respect to
even now,
election-related documents.
So we have Justin Heap now as a county recorder,
Right.
but the Board of Supervisors, some of which, at least one of them, two of them, holdovers from the previous administration, they are actually controlling the public records, and they're denying even more.
Right.
So even since Richer has left office, public records access has continued to decrease,
Right.
even in the last 12 months from what it used to be. And you're right, it's much easier to show where the holes are when you can look at it.
Right.
And what they've done is they've managed to obscure things just so even when we do get access to some documents, they always have some kind of an excuse, some kind of way to gaslight out of it, because we don't have everything we need.
Right.
I would be interested. What are your thoughts on how much is still there? Right. Retention laws, I think, is 24 months. How much do you think they're going to actually be able to access? What's your guess?
I don't know. What do you think?
it's tough. I mean, I would imagine if they knew it was coming, if somehow they knew it was coming, they probably would have dumped a lot of the evidence.
Mm-hmm.
But they filed an action today to try and block it. So that's a sign that there are things still there. They're trying to block their access to the ballots.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, they seized the physical ballots, which are still there.
Right.
And I know they're
In
not
Georgia.
here. In Georgia. I know here, I don't believe we still have them. I'm pretty sure they've destroyed that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the thing about Georgia is they've had constant ongoing litigation about the ballot, right? Because one of the big issues in Georgia is just how many real legitimate ballots did you have? And this is one of the things that we set up to feature on our show tonight is the fact that, after they counted 3 times, they get different counts. The third time they count, they actually send their numbers to a group called Elections Group, right? That's the name of it. It was founded by Zuckerberg with Zuckerbucks in the run-up to the 2020 election. And that's where we get, Zuckerberg's main involvement in the election. But a gentleman by the name of Ryan Macias, he got their numbers. How are these non-governmental organizations able to access the secret information held by the elections department in Georgia? My guess is they did the exact same thing in the state of Arizona. But then Ryan Macias emails the elections department officials and said, this was after their third count, just before certification, said, oh yeah, you're short about 18,000 ballots, right? Magically, when they announced their numbers, they had roughly 17,500 more ballots in their system. Well, what happened in the state of Arizona, right? The day after the election, 18,000 ballots mysteriously show up at Runbeck and are pumped into the system.
Well, we can't forget Ryan Macias and his deep roots here in Arizona, too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So this is a man who has had a position of influence from the NGO perspective and also working for the government.
Well, working for Katie Hobbs.
Right.
While she was Secretary of State.
He also worked for the EAC.
Right.
He was the man who certified the equipment and the machines and signed off on them.
Mm-hmm.
He's worked for CISA.
Right.
He was employed by CISA for a while, but he's getting paid currently from NGOs. And at the time in 2020, he resigned. January of 2020, he resigned from the EAC to go to work for Zuckerberg's foundation. So why are these county recorders, these Secretary of States, why are they sharing internal files with somebody who is working for an NGO and no longer a government employee? So these are questions I think that the DOJ and the FBI are investigating. This is part of what they want to know, right?
Yeah, and DOJ, come to Arizona. We need your help.
Well, I actually looked that up, and I'll read to you the Grok summary. Potential for escalation. If Arizona's refusal persists, the DOJ could file complaints or seek court orders for records similar to Georgia's case. This might involve federal investigations into 2020 or 2024 election data, potentially including searches or subpoenas. Recent reports indicate Arizona has already faced pressure to verify citizenship on registrations, resulting in the removal of nearly 50,000 non-citizens from rolls following lawsuits by groups like America First Legal. Georgia's situation could embolden the DOJ to push harder in Arizona, especially given ongoing debates over election integrity in the state. And this is what we keep alive in my committee.
You know why Grok is wrong?
Go ahead.
Who do we elect every 2 years that's on the federal ballot?
Right. So it's open in 2022
2022, because we elect every single member of the House of Representatives in 2022. That was a federal ballot and an Arizona ballot. and that election violated the equal protection rights and due process rights of every citizen of Arizona. Not only that, every citizen of the United States of America, because, fraud in one state impacts representation and therefore impacts everybody else in the country.
Well, absolutely.
Right.
When everything came out about 2020 and people started talking about the impact of the way the elections were administered, this became a national issue.
Oh, yeah.
And people who were sitting at home and said, my elections are fine. What we're doing here is fine. We're not worried about it. Whether that's true or untrue, there's no way to know, but they recognize the impact
Right.
at the local, state, and federal level. Anytime any of us are affected, it's just like rural counties in Arizona. There may be rural counties in Arizona that run perfectly well administered elections.
Right.
But what happens here in Maricopa, what happens in Pima, what happens in Pinal, that impacts all of those rural counties and who ends up representing them, whether it be a Democrat or a Republican, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, I hear that the House just passed out unanimously a bill, an election bill.
The U.S. House?
The Arizona House.
Right.
It
Collins.
it requires partisan observers in. They use the term, I think, vote centers, which
I do not like.
We don't like. They should have.
I will tell you, I don't like that. And if I'd have seen it in advance, I would have told Representative Cullen.
Yeah, they should have.
Like
they should have used the word polling center or something like that.
Well, they scratched polling centers and replaced it with voting centers.
Right.
And I'm not a fan of heading in the wrong direction when it comes to our elections. It's great that it adds more transparency. That is a big thing, right? Requiring poll observers during early voting, which is not currently a statutory requirement. But I feel like it's getting a lot of traction and support because the other side of election integrity got something here too, and that's codifying these vote centers.
Right.
And I just became aware of that today, and I was not a huge fan.
Yeah.
So I'll be talking to Representative Cullen about that one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Pima County, they blocked in 2025 partisan, and whether you're.
That's because it wasn't mandatory.
Right.
And now we're making it mandatory.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's a good thing. Well, it also protects overseas military voters because Congress passed a law that they didn't really look at the timing of the calendar. And so that would have negatively impacted overseas veterans. So.
Absolutely. So all in all, it's still a good bill.
And it moves it up 2 weeks.
Yes.
Voting day to the 21st of July, where a lot of Republicans are on vacation. So that's going to be a challenge for turning out the vote.
We were just talking about that and the need for an awareness campaign about this because there's a lot of snowbirds that are going to be gone during that time of year. And it will heavily impact turnout in the primaries.
Right.
So, and I think, aren't there some, maybe not this year, but I'm pretty sure there's like local and municipal races on that primary ballot as well.
I believe so.
And so that'll be difficult. We're going to be dealing with very low voter turnout unless there's a big education, because you cannot have a mail-in ballot mailed out of state. You have to specifically request an absentee ballot to do that. So that's going to require a lot of educating of the voters to make sure that their votes are being cast and their voices heard.
And might I just inject, the reason we're moving the primary up and up and up, honestly, we should get it up into the month of May eventually. This enables Republicans to unite. It also enables, and this doesn't come up in closed caucus meetings, but I know it firsthand, if you're a challenger and you have to fundraise, the less time between the primary and the general makes it a disadvantage for you if you're not an incumbent. Challengers should have a level playing field. They're already up against an incumbent who already has name ID and permanency.
Right.
And so this enables us to unite. It enables us to give challengers a fair shake.
Mhm.
And it's more in comportment with the rest of the country. The rest of the country has way earlier primaries.
Right, I believe Texas is in March, is my understanding.
It wouldn't surprise me. The other aspect, little known, is that legislators can't fundraise during session from political action committees, lobbyists. I don't fundraise from either of those, period, so it doesn't affect me personally. But I'm the only one I know who can say that. Most state legislators have that as a way to fundraise, but one cannot do that while one is in session because it's a conflict of interest. So
Right.
there is pushback sometimes with legislators who don't want to push it back too early.
Right.
And so that's kind of a little known fact. The other, if I may, my photo radar Senate concurrent resolution to put it on the ballot is running into some headwind. And I'm a little worried. I'm working on it. But the little known fact on that regarding elections, oddly enough, is that 10% of those monies go to the Clean Elections program.
There you
And
go.
a lot of, especially Democrats, some Republican candidates run their campaigns using Clean Elections money. So you can bet your bottom dollar they're going to be against the prohibition of photo radar because their cash influx comes from photo radar
Right.
proceeds.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
it's just another example of when people say that money drives politics.
Right.
Right. People make their decision based on what's financially.
Right. Well, and that's why I'm a proponent of letting the voters decide.
Yes.
Yeah.
Getting it to that point, i.e., getting it through the Senate and the House,
Mhm.
I'm having a little bit of a time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because some folks, colleagues, rely on that
Mhm.
money.
Well,
Complete conflict of interest.
yeah.
And also, by the way, the photo radar phenomenon is run by one company.
hmm
Talk about a monopoly.
Right. Wasn't there a recent issue with 400 and some thousand mistakes or something like that? 40,000?
Yeah, City of Mesa
Uh-huh.
had a judge sign the tickets who was no longer a judge.
Oh, wow.
But that became
Yeah.
irrelevant because the law doesn't stipulate that a judge has to sign a photo radar ticket.
Oh, wow.
But
Oh.
I just learned today and just tweeted it out on Wendy Rogers AZ that there was an anomaly with Paradise Valley and how they were misprinted and how they had to spend thousands of dollars, the town of Paradise Valley, to ameliorate that situation. Guess what? Paradise Valley, aside from what I just described, gives 10 photo radar tickets per person per year. And
10
you
per
say to
person
me,
per year.
how can Paradise Valley drivers be so susceptible? Well, it's not just Paradise Valley drivers. It's anybody who drives through
Right.
Paradise Valley.
Yeah.
So when Wendy has naysaying colleagues come up to me to say, you shouldn't be dictating to cities and towns whether or not they can have photo radar with a statewide ballot initiative, my answer is we don't just drive in our own little town.
Right.
We
correct.
drive all over the state.
Yep.
This is a state issue.
Right.
It absolutely is.
100%.
Yes.
Isn't in Paradise Valley the same community that wasn't auditing their attorneys' invoices for like 5 years?
Yes.
Something like that. You hear about that?
I did. I did hear about that.
Interesting. And so when they asked the attorney, to validate or verify his invoices, he simply quit. It's my understanding, instead of doing so. And so, yeah.
Well, guess who came to committee to testify against my photo radar bill? The mayor of Paradise Valley
There you go.
and the police chief.
Well, that's because they make a lot
They're
of money.
making a lot of money.
Lot of money.
They're making bank.
Scam.
Yeah.
SCAM.
Yeah.
Capital
Yeah.
letters.
Absolutely.
Uh-huh. Well,
Well, what do you want to see? Do you want to see any of these documents we pulled, or you want to just talk about it? How about that chain of custody document from Maricopa?
yeah. Let's pull that. Yeah. What number is that?
That's number 6, Steve. This is the late early ballots. So we were talking about Ryan Macias
Uh-huh.
and how he emailed Georgia, Fulton County, and said,
Right.
"Oh, you're missing about 17,000 ballots in your
18.
count."
He said
right?
18,000 something. Yeah.
Ballots in your count,
Uh-huh.
and then poof, there they were.
Right.
Very interestingly enough, Maricopa,
The day after the election.
day after the election, they
Yeah.
found 18,000
Mhm.
ballots in Maricopa as well.
Yeah, and can you zoom in on that? There we go. All right, so there we go. 18,000, right? 11,420. The election, ironically, was 11,320. And then if you look at the top up there, where it says Election Day, I want to know whose handwriting that is. If anybody out there is familiar with that handwriting, please email me at legal@wtpusaa.org and let me know who that is. Because I believe that was written after they decided to give us the document, but before they gave it to us, because that handwriting is nowhere else on that document, and it's made in a different colored pen.
Looks like a woman's handwriting.
And so it's quite interesting. Ryan Macias is emailing Fulton County telling him, oh, you're about 18,000 ballots short. And, after the day after the election in Maricopa County, boom, voila, we get 18,000 more ballots. And so you can pull it down, Steve.
Well, another thing that I find interesting, we, as you know, got access to the ballot affidavit envelopes from 2020, thanks to Senator Fan, who was able to get them under subpoena. They cut off anything that will associate postmarks. Right. So when they scan them, they zoom in. They're very isolated. They don't put zip codes on those envelopes. There are certain details that are omitted on those envelopes and what is scanned and provided to the elections department by Runback. But when you look at the metadata, when you look at when those envelopes were originally scanned by Runback, many of them were being scanned days after the election.
Right.
So if you imagine that they were working through the night on election day, there's this huge influx of ballots. You might think, okay, they might still be scanning on the 4th,
Right.
or they might still be scanning on the 5th. We were seeing things scanned and dispositioned days beyond the election, which was a little bit bizarre and a little bit interesting. But this was the controversy with the Runback video footage, right?
Yeah,
Brian?
Runback video footage. Yeah. The reason we've been seeking the Runback video footage, their loading dock video footage for the day after the election, is it would show who delivered 18,000 ballots to Runback the day after the election.
Right.
Or conversely, it would show that nobody actually delivered 18,000 ballots to Runback the day after the election, which would beg the question, where did they come from? Right? So we'd either find out, we'd be able to confirm that there was a huge truckload of ballots dropped off at Runback after the election. If we were able to confirm that, we could confirm who dropped them off. But my guess would be they would be wearing ski masks or something along those lines to conceal their identities. we would be able to, identify the truck and see, just where exactly did these ballots come from. Who knows? Maybe they're withholding the video because it was just a whole bunch of cars coming in with suitcases full of ballots. Who knows?
Right.
We don't know because there's absolutely no transparency, and that is what Stephen Richer, Adrian Fontes, Katie Hobbs, and Maricopa County Attorney's Office have been doing to the Public Records Act, and that's why people have questions still, open questions about the 2020 election.
Right.
What happened the day after the election, and why can't the people of the state of Arizona see that? So.
Well, and that's the thing. If you were administering an election
Mhm.
and there were 18,000, the origin of 18,000 ballots were in question, would you not, you personally would want to ensure that the public could see that transparently? And it's that lack of transparency, I think,
Right.
that frankly has put Georgia where Georgia is as well with the raids, right? It's a lack of transparency. People wanting to know what is the origin of these ballots. Has the legislature talked at all about trying to present bills that will strengthen chain of custody and the origin as to, being able to track where these ballots come from? Because you saw that document, right? It doesn't tell you where those ballots were retrieved from. Has that ever been in discussion that you're
Well,
aware
in
of?
years past, we have, and I wouldn't be surprised if bills come along to that point.
Yeah.
But they will get vetoed,
Right.
but that should not, as you're inferring, deter us from hearing these bills and continuing to press our case. Yeah, I run bills of my own, many of which were vetoed, irrespective.
But I think, in all fairness, Senator Rogers, and you've had a lot of people testify in your committee, and you're pretty up on a lot of what has been found in the elections. Is it mostly the law that needs changed, or is it the fact that the law isn't being followed? Right. So you have to weigh that as well, because some of those laws are actually pretty good, right?
Right, and you have a politically unwilling executive. How hard have we had to fight on the elections procedures manual?
Right.
How many lawsuits has the state legislature, the state Senate in particular, Warren Peterson in particular, has had to launch per the state constitution because the AG won't do her job? And so the state constitution enables the Senate president and or the House Speaker to press and act if she won't act. And
Right.
that's what's been happening for the last few years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it's just like, I remember, I think we got a video of it. I don't know if you want to watch it or not. Ryan Macias at the Lake v. Hobbs trial testifying that essentially you no longer need written documentation for chain of custody. But when we talk about chain of custody, we're talking about a documented act with respect to a thing, right?
Right.
And so, for example, in the criminal context, when they search you and they seize things from you, they make a list, they write down exactly what they seized from you, they sign their name, and then they turn that evidence over to somebody who then signs for it, right? And then that somebody holds on to it until somebody pulls it out and they diagnose the evidence, and that's documented by the person who retrieved it, diagnosed it, and what they did with it, right? And so you know, it's an act coupled with documentation of that act. And so when we read Arizona law, and Arizona law mandates that chain of custody be mandated for every single ballot, you know, this is sort of the lefty spin on what chain of custody really means. So,
Right.
Well,
yeah.
and I want to get it straight. We mentioned lefties, but we are seeing significant problems on both sides of the aisle when it comes to
Well,
election.
Stephen
integrity.
Richards, a Republican, and
That's correct.
and he didn't maintain chain of custody. In fact, he acknowledged to the Board of Supervisors that he couldn't account for, thousands of ballots. We're off. He sent them an email, and but of course, none of that has any effect. And so,
You're either for the law or you're not, right?
Amen.
I don't think it matters. Can you play that video, Steve?
That something that is outside of their control, even though they have done everything that is necessary to register.
hello, yeah, okay. So in the bottom left. Yeah, the gentleman you see in the bottom left there is Ryan Macias. He is a extreme radical left wing, bills himself as an election expert, and he was hired by Katie Hobbs in at least for the primary elections. He actually came out here and tried to lie his way into the Senate audit in 2021. You remember that when oh yeah, go ahead.
Well, he was hired by Katie Hobbs
Right.
to come into the audit.
Well,
and
that's after he was denied access because he was lying about his press credentials.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, we're ready.
That something that is outside of their control, even though they have done everything that is necessary to register, to be authenticated, and to cast their ballot, is now going to be thrown out because of an administrative paperwork error.
Thank you, Mr. Macias. No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-exam.
Yes, Your Honor.
You can, either way, you can sit there or you can come up to the podium, whichever's
Thank
more.
you, Your Honor. And first of all, I apologize for not standing earlier. I think my brain is falling asleep.
Mr. Blam,
That was,
you don't apologize for that.
All right. I have, can I use the Elmo, please? Good afternoon, Mr. Macias.
How you doing?
Placed a document on the Elmo. I believe it's titled Mitigating Risk, Chain of Custody, written January 5th, 2022. And I believe it's got your name on it. Did you prepare this or have someone prepare it at your request? And I will attest to you, Mr. Macias, this document, I believe, was downloaded off of your website with absolutely no changes. This appear to be your PowerPoint presentation?
I have provided a PowerPoint presentation with that title, yes.
I'm turning now to page 3. Under highlights, impacts, and risks from a broken chain of custody. Did I read that correctly?
Yeah, sorry, I'm having a hard time. Thank you for zooming in. Yep.
All right. Point 1 says the integrity of the system and its data will be deemed untrustworthy. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
Point 2, a court of law can render the system and data inadmissible. Did I read that correctly?
That is correct.
Point 3, inability to definitively determine if an actor has manipulated your system or data. Did I read that correctly?
That is correct.
Thank you very much. Really quickly, do administrative errors, Mr. Macias, generally impact 298,000 ballots? Yes or no?
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing.
Do administrative errors generally impact 90 or 298,000 ballots?
I don't know what you mean by impact.
You said general administrative error shouldn't allow ballots to be thrown out. Okay, if chain of custody is not valid for 298,000 ballots, is that a simple administrative error, yes or no?
Objection, Your Honor. Foundation calls for speculation.
He's asking a hypothetical. No,
Hypothetical.
nothing's a simple question. You're asking a hypothetical.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Macias, if you understand the question, sir, and you can answer it, please answer it. If you don't understand, we can have it rephrased, sir.
Yeah, can I get it rephrased, please?
All right. If 298,000 ballots did not have valid chain of custody, would that be a simple administrative error?
Missing a piece of information on a piece of paper would not
All right.
invalidate
You can
the
stop
chain
it
of
there.
custody.
Right. And so, you know, he says missing information on a piece of paper, right? But it's the chain, but that's chain of custody. Chain of custody is the elections department picking up 10 ballots from X drop box. They note they picked up 10 ballots from X drop box, what date and what time, and then they turn those over to somebody else who signs for them, right? That is chain of custody, just like in the criminal context when you're arrested and they seize your evidence. If they don't document that, then the court won't allow them to use that to prosecute you, right? Because there are questions as to where that evidence came from,
Well,
right?
in addition to him completely contradicting his entire PowerPoint,
Right.
which, by the way, I remember when we found that PowerPoint in the war room, it was a gold mine.
Yeah.
Because it contradicted everything he had put in his affidavit,
Right.
his attestation. But, you know, I found it interesting, and I just want to point this out. He stalled multiple times. This is
He did.
supposed to be a leading election expert
Right.
who asked you to repeat the question multiple times. After the objection, he made you repeat it 2 more
Right.
times.
I don't understand.
And if you notice where his
Mhm.
eyes were tracking, he was reading.
Yes, he kept reading to the left.
And I
Right.
and I honestly believe to this day, if anybody goes back and watches Ryan
Mhm.
Macias's testimony, which it's interesting how many of them appeared via Zoom.
Right.
Right.
Well, and the funny thing is he was in court and then they ushered him out so they could put him in a room where I think they could feed him his answers.
So repeat that again, because a lot of people other than us, Brian, don't know that. Ryan Macias was in the court
He was in the
building.
courtroom until he was set to give his testimony, at which point they took him somewhere where he was not required to testify live. And he kept looking to the left. And he made up this excuse, oh, the glare of when I look to the right hurts my eyes. Well, if you watch his testimony on direct examination, he's pretty much looking straight forward, right?
Mhm.
They throw him a softball snowball question that he already knows the answer to because they've gone over the questions they're going to throw him, and then he answers it. He knows what he's saying, right? But when he's confronted with something on cross-examination and he doesn't know what to say because it's specific to Arizona's case, he then starts looking to the left. And I objected to his testimony several times because he continued to do that throughout his cross-examination. And so, you know, it is what it is.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. And they had the
Absolutely.
media on their side. So,
They sure did.
yeah.
Well, do you have any thoughts or closing remarks? Where do you think the elections are heading, and what do you think President Trump's next move is?
Well, 3 things come to mind. The Democrats in my world read all of their remarks off their screen too, which is just amazing.
Mhm.
I think we're going to increase, to answer question 2, I think we will increase the U.S. House of Representatives by 15 seats. Really? And what is the president's next move? That is 5-dimensional chess. The man never sleeps. I saw the Melania movie, and that was fantastic. She's a graceful, artistic, fantastic woman. But I think they sleep in separate rooms from the end of the movie. That's what it looked like because he never sleeps. I think he is an amazing gift to our country. And he's aging, but he has selected the most talented cabinet you could imagine. Hegseth is a fantastic Department of War head. You have Nome, she's everywhere. And you have Rubio, who's got how many jobs now?
Mm-hmm.
I think he has surrounded himself with top rate, dedicated talent. And he keeps winning in the courts. I think we're going to win the tariff question. And our job is to expose
Mhm.
all of this fraud and corruption. And thank goodness for citizen journalists like Nick Shirley
Mhm.
and Cam Higby and Eric Doherty and these people who I follow on X to get up to the date news. And Gunther Eagleman. I mean, these guys are fantastic.
Right.
And so I'm very optimistic. I'm a glass half full kind of gal, and I think we're going to win the midterms. Also, President Trump is going on the road to do rallies for the midterms, which is going to be a blast. We're going to go to Trump rallies.
So you think we're going to pick up 15 seats? That's your prediction.
Yes.
All right.
Mhm.
What do you think, Brian?
Well, I'm not going to make a prediction. I don't want to. I don't want to jinx things, but I would say that I think, my big push is that we need to restore America to the constitutional republic it was meant to be. And that includes both a reallocation of power along a federal basis, right? A return of the social, health, education, welfare power to the states.
To the states.
The eradication of the Department of Education and these
Absolutely.
national education boards that push all this lefty stuff down, and eradication of all these, get the government out of our health care, at least the federal government. And then we at the state level, where we have more contact with our elected representatives, like you, Wendy.
We're the closest thing to the
right.
people.
You're the closest thing to the people. Right.
Email me, they text me.
Right.
It's
right.
And I respond.
Yeah. And so a restoration of the constitutional republic, which, by the way, also includes those people who were MAGA, that are sort of, falling out against Trump, saying, oh, Trump's, on some other agenda. But I mean, look at the WHO, right? The World Health Organization. They took the U.S. flag down because we are no longer pumping the hardworking tax dollars of American citizens into that waste of an organization. And the United Nations is near bankrupt and about to close. So in New York City, Trump can open the largest Trump Tower in the world, right? The UN building. And so it's time.
It'll take years to restore. I think it has a lot of rats in it.
It's got a lot of rats. It's got a lot of cockroaches. But America is restoring itself as America for Americans, and that's a good thing, because Mexico is for Mexicans. If I were to go to Mexico, they wouldn't allow me to vote in their elections.
Right.
Right. If I were to go to Guatemala, to El Salvador, to any other country in the world, they wouldn't allow me to vote in their elections.
No, and they're pushing for tough immigration reform in Mexico.
They are.
Imagine that. Yeah.
And what's interesting is, I think the people who say that this is, the whole immigration debate is racism, right, in a big ball. I was on the U.S.-Mexico border for a lot of the Biden administration's regime. And I met people from about 120 different countries around the world trucking across the U.S. border. And
I was with him.
They were Asians. They were Central Europeans. They were Europeans. They were from South America.
Middle
they were
East.
from North America. They were from the Middle East. So it's not a racial issue, because we're talking about a whole host of people who came here illegally that are now being removed from the United States.
And I said that at the beginning of the show.
Right.
They're losing their case.
Uh-huh.
And so they offer these really old, tired specious arguments. And
Yeah.
that tells me here on the ground in my own state that they're losing. In fact, it's kind of funny. I was telling my husband on the way over here, one of my colleagues on the military committee looks just so tired and wan and defeated when she tries to debate me. And I'm cheerful.
Right.
And it's not that hard to debate.
Yeah.
No. Especially if you've lived it, right? Like we've been to the border. We've been with Brian. Steve and I have been there many, many times. We've seen what goes on there as well. I wonder how many of them actually have even been to the border or even really understand the situation. Because I'm telling you, me personally, if I were in Mexico and somebody in Mexico said, I really don't want you here because you're taking my jobs, I wouldn't be offended by that. They were posting signs, white man, go home. And I'm like, good for you, Mexico. You know,
Right.
I don't want your housing prices and cost of living to go up either because of immigration. And
Well,
it's just interesting how they want to make it a race issue. They want to come up with all of these false arguments for why they do it. But the reality is illegal immigration increases the cost of living, housing, healthcare,
and
education,
Insurance.
everything.
here's
And
what was
yes,
here's
big
what was
time.
happening with housing, right? People that were living in an apartment complex in Gilbert, off Arizona, whatever it is, at Arizona Country Club, whatever it is, and basically what happened was they started to fill this apartment complex with these illegal immigrants that were being pushed in, regardless of what race they were. It didn't matter what race they were.
It was
They were-
because of the government money
Right.
they were
So
receiving.
what was happening is the government was willing to pay X amount per unit. And so what the apartment complex did was they essentially doubled the prices. They sent out notices that new leases will be at X amount, which was significantly higher. Most people couldn't afford it. And so they left and they brought in more immigrants who were
course.
being paid for by U.S. federal tax dollars.
The landlords were getting rich.
Right, absolutely.
Right.
Off of government money, which
Right.
is our tax dollars. So
Right.
there are citizens that can't afford
Uh-huh.
a place to live, but their tax dollars are paying double for
Right.
someone else to live. And again, I have to keep making that correlation because you brought it
Right.
up, Mexico. There are housing places in Mexico.
Uh-huh.
They won't rent to the locals because they can make a lot more money off
Right.
the white man.
Right.
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 And so it's this, I mean, we're living the same thing
Mhm.
on two sides of the coin. So it should not be controversial. It should not
Right.
be a partisan issue at all, right?
Right.
But if you're bent on the destruction of our country, then you're going to come up with whatever flimsy argument you can that
Yeah.
will appeal to the low information, uneducated, pop culture voter.
Yeah. And to the students whom they are brainwashing in our schools by, giving them extra credit to go out and attend what are likely to be violent demonstrations. And so somebody needs to do something about that. It's my understanding the Phoenix Public School, the person who runs them, is fairly irate about teachers taking students out to engage in these activities.
Good. As
Yeah.
parents, people should
Right.
be. I mean, it was bad enough when my kids were going through school. I cannot
Right.
even imagine what it's like to have
Yeah.
a parent in school right now.
Oh, no doubt.
Well, I think homeschooling is becoming more and more popular.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and thanks to our legislature, we
That's
have
possible.
choice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Boy,
school
we've had to
choice.
really
Yeah.
struggle to maintain that.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well,
that's
thank
what's
you
good.
for giving up some of your very valuable time on a very busy day. Yeah,
Well,
we appreciate
it's
you having
my
you
honor,
here.
my pleasure,
Yeah.
and
Uh,
Okay. Yeah.
Uh, before we go there, I just want to say I think you hit it right on the nail. People only push these lies and these policies when they are hell bent on destroying our nation.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that is the difference. It's you know, we can have debate over policy all day long. We can talk about, you know, somebody who's strong, somebody who's weak. But really what it comes down to, it's not Republican, it's not Democrat, it's not how strong the legislator is or isn't. It's, do you love this country or are you hell bent on destroying it? And that's really the day that we're living in. And, you know, fortunately for you, many of your colleagues love the country. But that's, I think, where we're at. And I think that's what it comes down to. And I've heard your colleagues, to Steve's point, talk about living on stolen land. And then they're bringing people from land that have never lived on this land. So it's not like, you know, their whole idea and the whole concept is just completely wrong. But thank you for what you're doing. Thanks for being here with us. And
Thanks for what you do. And it's essential for Arizonans to understand that even though we talk about national politics and how great our president is and his cabinet and so forth, we have to win back our state, because so much is still decided, thankfully, by the state. But we have the top 3 executive positions occupied now by just
Radical
extremist politicians.
Yeah.
And the AG's race, you and I were discussing this yesterday.
Yeah.
I think that is absolutely a pivotally important race.
It's exceptionally important because the current AG, not only is she an extremist who put not only the lives of ICE in danger, but she put the lives of people from the Arizona Department of Public Safety in danger because they have a SWAT unit. They go out and they serve warrants. She put Mesa Police Department, Chandler Police Department, Maricopa County, Pima County, every sheriff's department in the state in danger whenever they serve these warrants because of the how-to tip she was giving. And so that and her persecution of opposition politicians, you know, for her left-wing organization, States United, that basically does all the work for her. Because she was never really a lawyer. I think it's time that voters send a resounding message to people who use the awesome power of the state to prosecute their political enemies. And, you know, it doesn't matter if the people she's prosecuting wins, because the substantial cost in terms of both stress on your life, right, and in terms of financial costs to defend yourself is totally draining.
Right.
It ruins you, and that's ultimately, I think, the goal.
Absolutely. Well, lawfare isn't necessarily designed to convict.
Right.
It's designed to
harass.
destroy and harass, and you know that's the day and age we've been living in.
Right.
But
It's time to turn it around. It's time to turn out, and it will be absolutely essential July 21st to get people out.
Yeah.
We have to do this, everybody. This is, for our state, I agree with Colladin, the most important election.
Yeah.
agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Well, thank you.
And with that, thank you again for being here, and God bless. And
Peace.
God bless America.